Thank you so much for joining us for our on-demand webinar, 911 Feel Safe with Emergency Savings. My name is Melanie Reyes, and I will be your host. I'm the Financial Wellness Specialist here at Summit Credit Union. Now, the statistics are out there, and it can be alarming. In research we've done, we found that 50% of Americans cannot afford to cover an unexpected expense of $400. More than half of Americans have less than 3 months worth of expenses in an emergency fund, according to Bankrate's July 2021 Emergency Savings Survey. That total includes 1 in 4 Americans, or 25%, who indicate having no emergency fund at all. And that statistic is up 21% since 2020. Now, these statistics warranted us to put together an emergency savings session to help set members up for success in the event of an emergency. In this session, you will learn how to start an emergency savings, tips on how to find the money to save, be provided with strategies to establish and feel safe, learn creative and fun ways to save, and learn how to shatter the guilt when it comes to tapping into your funds. Let's jump in. So what is an emergency savings? An emergency savings is an account that is used to set aside funds that will be used in the event of an emergency. An emergency can be defined as something that was not expected. Life is unpredictable, and all it takes is one obstacle to derail you from your financial routine. An emergency fund minimizes the stress and damage caused by surprise expenses. I'm sure we can all think of something that came up out of nowhere when you least expected it. I know that I've had many of these happen, and they always seem to happen at the most inconvenient time. Let's take a moment to pause. What was the first situation that came to mind when I mentioned something coming on unexpectedly? Now, this situation may have left you short from one paycheck to the next, and you felt the impact. You may have had to charge on credit cards because there was no backup plan, and now you're paying interest and a minimum payment, or you may have had to use funds from another savings account that was not intended. When you reflect back, it helps you put things into perspective and formulate a new plan going forward. This is where we want you to feel safe with an emergency savings. In our research and meeting with members, we found that financial stress can affect your mental health. Over half of both women, 68%, and men, 56%, report losing sleep due to money worries. Mental health and financial stress are strongly linked too. And we've learned that people with debt are 3 times more likely to have a mental health problem such as anxiety or depression. Research shows that people with high levels of debt have higher rates of depression. And Brennan Malik, a financial therapist, states that stressing about your finances can make you physically ill. Any type of prolonged stress, including financial strain, creates a constant fight or flight response in the body. When you plan ahead, you will reduce your stress because it provides a financial buffer against having to borrow money to pay for those unanticipated expenses. Let's break down what you should consider when you take a look at creating an emergency savings and what expenses to cover. When you envision emergency savings, think about the unexpected, and this is a visual for you. We found that circumstances will differ for all. There will be things that you have to worry about and things that you do not. For example, you might be a homeowner and have potential unexpected expenses that come from home ownership. You may not be a homeowner nor have children, so that will look different for you. Grab a piece of paper and write down things that come to mind that could impact your budget that would be unexpected and or referred to as an emergency. And feel free to hit pause here if you need to take some time to grab a piece of paper. Now that you've started your list, let's jump into common examples that we see. Now, during the pandemic, many of us experienced varying hardships that we may still be recouping from. I recently had an emergency where my vehicle was vandalized unexpectedly in a parking lot out of the blue, and I had no association with this individual. The damage was not expected, and it had a cost associated with the repairs and the insurance deductible. Another emergency could be a motor going out on a vehicle, a dental expense such as a filling or a bridge, or a surgery for a pet. Now think about how comfortable you feel with emergency savings right now. Do you save regularly? Have you started? Maybe have a good grasp? Started, you're really not sure how you're feeling? Thinking, what is an emergency? or you could be a beginner. These steps here in this workshop will certainly help you have practical ways to move forward in creating an emergency savings that fits your needs. When it comes to savings, the percentage of people that want to save for life goals and emergencies is quite high. The American Savings Statistic in 2020 shared that 70% of people have less than $1,000 saved, and only 12% of people have saved between $1,000 and $5,000. And only 5% of Americans have saved between $5,000 and $10,000. So knowing those statistics, who needs an emergency savings? Well, that answer is easy. It's everyone. We know that 31% of Americans have no emergency fund at all, resulting in the use of credit cards and retirement accounts. Even a minor setback can have a longer lasting impact when it turns into a debt. More and more people are relying on credit and loans to cover an emergency. And at times, people are still paying on a debt that occurred in the past, yet they need another loan to cover the newest emergency. So let's envision what it looks like to feel safe in your eyes with an emergency savings. To feel safe with an emergency savings is to prevent added stress that comes with paying for unexpected expenses. You can build wealth through an emergency fund and feel confident in your finances, even when you have to tap into it in times of need. It's all about feeling well about your finances and knowing you're feeling safe that you've planned ahead. No matter where you fall, there will always be revisits to your plan and situations that will require you to make adjustments. In an ideal world, we want to plan for everything that could happen unexpectedly and to build an emergency savings that will help you feel safe. While that may be the goal, do know that things may still happen even though you are saving. Setting up a plan and having a strategy in place is a great place to start. So let's differentiate two things: known unknowns and unknown unknowns. There is a common misconception here that I want to address as you plan to create your emergency savings plan and how to figure out how much you need to save. The known unknowns on the left are things that you are aware of that will happen. There are costs associated with maintaining items or the necessary maintenance associated with a purchase. So for example, new tires generally need replacing around 30,000 miles, replacement brakes, annual vet checkups for pets, monthly medicines, prescriptions, and food, septic maintenance, and even property taxes. Now, these are things that can be planned for that aren't really emergencies. Now, the unknown unknowns are true emergencies. These are things that have no exact timeline and can happen out of the blue. A few examples of unexpected emergencies could be blowing a tire on the interstate, losing a job, coming down with an illness, unexpected loss of a loved one, and it could be even an accident. So think about how well you balance the differentiation of known unknowns and unknown unknowns. And then let's talk about how we find the money. There are a number of strategies that can help you implement to build an emergency fund. The first step is taking a look at your budget. I know the word budget tends to scare people off. We have a free tool that will allow you to input your expenses and income, which will do all of the math for you. This is right on our website. You could type in budget in the upper right-hand corner at summitcreditunion.com to be able to look at this Excel document. One of my most favorite things is that it will certainly do all of the math for you. In order to know how much you can save, you have to figure out what you have left once you pay all of your bills. And I've seen people where they blindly choose an amount, and over the pay period, they tend to dip into that savings as they find themselves falling short. This habit can be really hard to break once you start dipping into an emergency savings on a regular basis. The importance of having an emergency savings is to discipline yourself to save and to only use it when an emergency arises. In this case, to start, it's almost like working backwards to find the money. First step is to know your take-home pay. For people that have multiple deposits from one paycheck going to various accounts, you do need to take into consideration the total amount. From there, what bills are you obligated to? When you can itemize your bills and see it on paper or in an Excel document or even on Word, that will give you a clear snapshot of where your money goes every month. Then what you do from there is you look at what is remaining. and you evaluate that amount. The leftover portion is what you start to work with. If you're new to using a budget worksheet, this is a fantastic tool as most of the time the categories are all listed for you. You can type over a line as well if you need to customize the title to your liking. I like to remind people to look at their expenses often. You can certainly find savings in calling companies to check on promotions and savings opportunities as well. A great example of this is internet and phone packages. I've seen people call and save hundreds of dollars on their bill for the entire year. Your newfound savings can certainly help you jumpstart your emergency fund. Now that you're aware of what you have to work with, the next step is choosing a monthly savings goal. Let's say you have $400 left over. Consider starting with $100. You can work your way up from there once you see how comfortable that feels for you. Many people like to set up an automatic transfer with their payroll cycle, so it's an out of sight and an out of mind thing. When you set an amount to start, you're taking the first step in creating a habit to save on a regular basis. When you look at your budget and the amount that is left over after your bills are paid, I generally tell people to take that amount in and think about it for a little bit. Does the number reflect what you see left in your account every single month? Often when I meet with people to go over their budget for the first time, they are quite shocked at the amount that is remaining after the bills are paid and the essentials are covered. They're shocked to see what they've spent every month without contributing to a savings account. If you were to decide today, after looking at the amount on the worksheet, what would you feel comfortable saving? Since we are on a webinar here, feel free to hit pause and walk through that worksheet as you're going through this exercise. After looking at that amount, what would you feel comfortable saving? That amount will determine, it's going to really determine and be different for everyone. The great thing about automatic transfers, as I mentioned, is that you have the ability to modify the transfers anytime. Now, ultimately, the goal would be to increase it over time rather than decreasing. When considering an amount to start saving, take into consideration as well the variable expenses that generally hit when you least expect it. Look at your medical plan through your employer. What is the maximum out of pocket that you should have? For me, it would be $2,000. So I have to take into consideration that for 12 months, I need to save $166.66. For a new tire, that may be $300. And I know for a new fridge, that might be $1,200. I know these are bigger expenses, but they are expenses that will happen over time. When you plan for the unexpected, you're preparing yourself to use cash instead of credit. And research states that after you've had a trauma, it takes 6 months for you to really find your new budget. And this is the first step in preventing a major budget impact. Now let's jump into maintaining an emergency savings once you've started. Now that you know how to figure out your budget, designate an amount to save per month and set up automatic transfers, so you have one less step to worry about, let's talk about maintaining the savings account. Over the years, I've met with so many families specifically on creating and maintaining an emergency fund. I've seen it all with saving really well to being completely afraid to pull out cash, if something were to come up, because there's a fear since so much hard work was putting into it, but also that need to tap into it to cover miscellaneous spending that is not a true emergency. To maintain your savings, here are 3 tips that can help you stay on track. Number 1 is evaluate your miscellaneous spending. Can you save more than you have been? Are you feeling comfortable with what you're spending where you don't have to charge on credit or tap into the emergency fund? Is there anything left over in your account every single month that you can push over to that emergency account? Number 2 would be leverage inconsistent income. Now, this is a game changer for many who use their work bonus, their commission, part-time income throughout the holiday season, or even get creative with garage sale money and how to earn additional income. This is a great way to put a lump sum into your emergency savings rather than increasing the amount that you've budgeted every single month when there's inconsistent income. Now, another inconsistent income is a tax refund, and people tend to forget about this. This is an easy way to boost your emergency fund. And I usually say don't put everything in there unless you're feeling comfortable with it, but a good chunk of it would be a great start. And then number 3 would be using cash gifts from birthdays and holidays. Now, some of you may be wondering, what if I don't dip into my emergency fund at all throughout the year and I keep on saving each month? Well, that is great news that you've had no unexpected expenses this year, but they will happen. The more you save, the more you are preparing yourself for things that will pop up out of nowhere. And there's nothing wrong with having more funds that you've saved than you need right now. One of the families that I've worked with did very well on building a savings account from $0. And luckily, she had no unexpected expenses that happened in a 12-month period. There was a conversation about wanting to pull from that emergency savings to really pay down debt. And with discipline, she kept adding to that emergency savings every single month. She was so used to using credit when something came up that it was really out of her norm to be able to have that savings built up. After a year of saving, she found out that she needed a new water heater for her home. And that expense was more than what she would have saved for the entire year. So it's proof that you can set aside a certain amount each month, but one unexpected expense can blow the entire bucket in one time. Now, when this happened, she was able to cover 75% of the bill in cash, resulting in much less that is needed to accumulate interest for what is being borrowed. Now, following that unexpected expense, she really buckled down and relooked at how much she was putting into an emergency savings each month. Now, let's cover saving or paying down debt and how to prioritize, as this is a common question that we get. From my experience, you can certainly do both. The idea of saving is to avoid having to use credit to borrow in times of need. You can equally work to pay down debt while contributing to an emergency savings. We have experts here at Summit that can meet with you completely free of charge to determine the best amount to allocate to each of those to reach your goals. And we'll certainly have our email address at the end of this session where you could reach out with any questions. Now let's talk about tapping into your emergency savings. As mentioned earlier, I've worked with many people who have had to tap into their emergency savings for legitimate emergencies, but they also have overextended themselves. It's really important to keep the savings for the savings purpose. Otherwise, your plan will not work as intended. If your goal is to save $100 a paycheck, but you're constantly taking out $75 per paycheck for miscellaneous spending, you've now prolonged your goal as you are technically only saving $25 per paycheck. It will take you much longer to reach your goal of saving when you're regularly using the funds for miscellaneous spending. A question to ask yourself is, are you okay with taking longer to work towards your emergency savings goal to continue to spend the way you are? What I would suggest doing is changing the amount in this specific example to $25 per paycheck rather than $100 to really build that habit and behavior of adding to your savings instead of pulling. Now let's talk about how you shatter the guilt when you need to tap into your funds. I know it's hard work to establish an emergency savings. I've worked with a number of families who have felt guilt when it comes to needing to pull to cover an unexpected expense. It really does take practicing positive money messaging in your mind to shatter the guilt when it comes to needing to tap into that emergency savings for something that is truly an emergency. Rather than feeling stressed about using the funds, tell yourself you've planned for this. Feel the pride in having that savings set aside and celebrate not needing to charge on credit or take out loans, knowing that you're paying cash instead. Now, there are a number of ways that you can get creative when it comes to saving money. I thought these would be neat to share, and we do have a handout available, so feel free to send us an email at the end of this webinar, and we can send you a copy of the worksheet as well. The 52-week savings challenge. Now, this is a classic savings challenge where you simply decide that you're going to save $1 a week, $2, maybe $5. Something that is manageable is really key. If you save $5 a week, you would have $260 at the end of the year. If you manage to save $100 a week, you would have $5,200 at the end of the year. Now, some of you may have seen this challenge as well, where it's a weekly increase. So you may start with $1, the next week go to $2, and so on. Now, the no spend challenge, this can be more fun than it sounds. You pick a weekend or a week, whatever seems challenging and doable for you, and you spend no money. You do need to allow an exception to make sure that you're paying your bills on time as well. Now, the pantry challenge, this is a good challenge, money savings for, especially during these certain times. The pantry challenge is a contest in which you declare that you won't buy any food until you've exhausted all of the possibilities from your refrigerator and your pantry. Now, while my kids may not love that the snack cabinet is not being stocked, this method really challenged me to use what I have rather than continuing to add more to the pantry and throw out expired items later. Now, the Keep All the Change challenge, this is where you look for loose change in your home and you put it in a jar or change that you receive back from a grocery store. Do this for a year and see how much you may have saved in the end. Now, the Find and Use Rebate Challenge, this can take some time, but the savings can help you boost your emergency fund by using coupons and rebates for other purchases. The 30-day rule, this is a challenge to help you avoid impulse purchases. The idea is that when you have the urge to impulse spend, wait 30 days before you make a decision to purchase to see if it's something that you truly want or need. Now, the leftover challenge, the leftover money challenge, suggests that you take your remaining money left over from your monthly budget and place it in your emergency fund bucket before your next pay period hits. A great example of this is doing that on a Thursday night before your payroll comes in on a Friday. Before we end our session, I want to highlight the importance of celebrating your savings. When you work hard to challenge yourself in new ways, make sure you acknowledge what it took for you to get there. And the more you reflect and see your growth, the more you are to continue on with your plan. For our session recap today, you've learned how to find the money to build savings, how stress with money ties to mental health, strategies to establish and feel safe, and how to shatter the guilt when it comes to tapping into your funds. Now, here is how you can follow us and learn more about our on-demand webinars or even our live webinars. Certainly reach out to us at the email address listed at financialwellness@summitcreditunion.com to be able to get those handouts if you would like as well. Thank you so much for joining us today and have a great day.